When farm mobsters thought they could push around a quiet veteran at the local café, they had no idea they were about to face the wrath of his highly trained military K-9s. What happens when these rural thugs discover they've threatened the wrong man with a lethal set of skills and loyal four-legged partners? I still remember the exact moment my quiet life turned upside down. It was a Tuesday morning, sunny with a slight chill in the air. The kind of day that fools you into thinking nothing bad could happen. I pulled into the gravel parking lot of Rosie's Cafe, my old truck kicking up dust as I parked. Through the windshield, I watched the usual morning crowd filter in and out. Farmers grabbing coffee before heading to their fields. Office workers picking up breakfast sandwiches. Normal folks living normal lives. Stay put, boys, I told Rex and Shadow, my two Belgian Malinois dogs watching me from the back seat. Their ears perked up at my voice, but they settled back down obediently. These weren't ordinary pets. They were retired military K-9s who would serve alongside me during my darkest days overseas. They'd saved my life more times than I could count. I've been back home for 8 months now. Bought my grandfather's old farm on the edge of town. Most days were quiet. Just me, the dogs, and endless acres to heal our war-worn spirits. That's all I wanted. Peace and quiet. The bell above Rosie's door jingled as I walked in. Sally, the waitress who'd been serving coffee here since I was a kid, smiled warmly. Morning, Jake. The usual. She already had a mug in hand, steam rising from fresh coffee. Yes, ma'am. I nodded, sliding onto my regular stool at the counter. Sally was about my mom's age, with kind eyes and no-nonsense attitude that reminded me of my drill sergeant, in a good way. The cafe smelled like bacon and maple syrup. Country music played softly from old speakers. For a moment, it felt like I'd never left, like the war was just a bad dream instead of 4 years of my life. Then the door swung open again, harder this time. The bell didn't just jingle, it slammed against the glass. The whole cafe went quiet. 3 men walked in. The one in front, a tall guy with slick back hair and a fancy leather jacket, scanned the room like he owned it. The 2 behind him were bigger, with thick necks and mean eyes. They weren't from around here. Well, the leader said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent cafe. Isn't this place just charming? Sally's smile disappeared. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down my coffee. You okay? I asked her quietly. That's Mac Donovan, she whispered, and his boys Vince and Pete. They've been buying up farms all over the county. When people don't want to sell, she trailed off, looking down. I'd heard rumors since coming back. Farmers pressured to sell their land for way less than it was worth. Strange fires breaking out when they refused. But I kept to myself, focusing on getting my own place in order, dealing with my own demons. Mac and his goons took a booth by the window. Sally reluctantly went to take their order, her shoulders tense. I sipped my coffee, watching from the corner of my eye. I wasn't looking for trouble. Not anymore. I'd seen enough fighting to last 10 lifetimes. What's good here, sweetheart? Mac asked Sally, his voice dripping with fake charm. Everything, she answered stiffly. The special today is... I wasn't asking about the food, Mac interrupted, grabbing her wrist. I was asking what else you might have to offer. Sally tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Please let go, she said, her voice barely audible. No one moved. The other customers stared at their plates or out the windows. This wasn't the first time they'd seen this, I realized. They were scared. I thought about my dogs waiting in the truck. I thought about the promise I'd made to myself to stay out of conflicts, to live quietly. But some habits die hard. The lady asked you to let go, I said, my voice coming out low and steady. The cafe went even more silent, if that was possible. Mac turned slowly to look at me, surprised that anyone would dare speak up. Mind your own business, old man, he said, still gripping Sally's wrist. I wasn't old, just 32 with premature gray at my temple from stress. But I didn't correct him. Instead, I stood up, my movements deliberate. I wasn't a big guy, not like Mac's bodyguards, but I stood straight the way years in uniform had taught me. In this town, I said, treating people with respect is everyone's business. Mac's eyes narrowed as he took me in. The way I stood. The faded tattoo on my forearm, my unit's emblem. the scars visible on my neck. Something changed in his expression, just a flicker of uncertainty. He released Sally's wrist, pushing her away slightly. "And who might you be?" he asked, leaning back in his booth. "Just a farmer having breakfast," I replied. "You don't look like a farmer," said one of his goons. Vince, the bigger one with a buzz cut. "You look like military." "Used to be," I admitted. "Now I'm just trying to enjoy my coffee." Max studied me for another moment, then laughed. "Well, soldier boy, you should know when you're outnumbered." He gestured around at his men. 3 against 1 aren't good odds, even for a hero. I didn't tell him that I never went anywhere truly alone anymore. That my best allies were just outside in my truck, with hearing 6 times sharper than any humans and jaws strong enough to break bones. Instead, I placed some money on the counter for my coffee. "Sally," I said, not taking my eyes off Mac, "I'll come back for breakfast later." As I turned to leave, Mac called after me. "Hey, soldier boy, what's your name? And where's this farm of yours?" I paused at the door. Giving him my information probably wasn't smart, but something told me he'd find out anyway in a town this small. Jake Miller. I took over my grandfather's place on Route 16. Recognition dawned in his eyes. The old Miller farm? That place is practically falling apart. You should sell while you can still get something for it. My hand tightened on the door handle. My grandfather had worked that land until the day he died. He left it to me, knowing someday I'd come home. "It's not for sale," I said firmly. Mac's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Everything's for sale, soldier boy, for the right price or the right pressure." As I walked out into the morning sunshine, his words hung in the air like a threat. And I wondered, after trying so hard to leave violence behind, how long it would be before I'd have to face it again. 3 days passed before they came. I spent them getting ready. I knew they'd show up eventually. Men like Mac Donovan don't take well to being challenged, especially not in front of others. Their pride gets hurt, and they need to prove they're still top dog. The morning after our run-in at the cafe, I drove into town to talk to Sally. She was nervous about speaking with me at first, eyes darting to the door every time it opened. "They've been causing trouble for months," she finally admitted, voice low as she refilled my coffee cup. "Started with buying foreclosed properties. Then they began pressuring people who were struggling, offering cash, but way below market value. And when people say no," I asked, already guessing the answer. "Accidents happen." She wiped the counter with shaking hands. "The Johnson's barn caught fire. Old man Peterson's tractor brakes failed. Could be coincidences, but you don't believe in that many coincidences," I finished for her. She shook her head. "Sheriff won't do anything. Says there's no proof. Or he's being paid to look the other way," I suggested. Sally just pressed her lips together tightly. That was answer enough. Back at the farm, I got to work. First, I walked the perimeter with Rex and Shadow, letting them get familiar with every inch of the property. They were smart dogs, understanding boundaries and threats better than most humans. I checked my security system. Nothing fancy, just motion-activated lights and a few trail cameras I'd set up to watch for coyotes. Now they'd serve a different purpose. In the late afternoon, I drove into the nearby city, where nobody knew me. At a hardware store, I bought extra locks, boards for windows, and other supplies. At a specialty shop, I found what I really needed: military-grade tactical gear for my dogs. Protective vests, special collars, and lead lines that wouldn't snap under pressure. The sales clerk raised his eyebrows. "You expecting trouble?" "Hope not," I answered honestly. "But I like to be prepared." That night, I couldn't sleep. The dogs sensed my unease, staying close instead of settling on their beds. Rex, the older of the two, rested his head on my knee as I sat cleaning my grandfather's old shotgun. Legally owned, never fired except at clay pigeons and the occasional snake. "Not looking for fight, boys," I told them, scratching behind Rex's ears. "But we're not going to be bullied either." Shadow, the younger dog, whined softly in response. The next day crawled by. I fixed a broken fence, checked on my small vegetable garden, and waited. By evening, I was starting to think maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe Mac was all talk. Then I heard it. Engines rumbling down my long dirt driveway. Not just one vehicle, but several. I whistled softly to Rex and Shadow, who appeared instantly at my side, alert and ready. "Easy," I commanded, moving to the window. 3 pickup trucks approached, kicking up dust clouds in the setting sun. They parked in a half circle in front of my house, headlights still on, momentarily blinding me. Car door slammed. I counted 5 men getting out. Mac was in front, flanked by his usual goons. 2 new guys hung back by the trucks. I stepped on my porch, shotgun visible but pointed down. Not threatening, just present. Rex and Shadow stayed inside as instructed. My secret advantage if things went bad. Evening, gentlemen, I called out, keeping my voice casual. Something I can help you with? Max sauntered forward, all confidence and swagger. Just being neighborly, Miller. Thought we'd stop by and discuss business. Not much to discuss, I replied. My land's not for sale. Everything has a price, Mac insisted, moving closer. I noticed Vince and Pete spreading out slightly, trying to flank me. Classic military tactic. These guys had training of some kind. Why my farm? I asked, genuinely curious. There's bigger, better land around here. Max smiled thinly. Location, Miller. Your property has the best access to the river. Perfect for our development plans. Development. I raised an eyebrow. This is agricultural land. Zoning can change, he said dismissively, with the right connections. I understood then. They weren't just buying land for farming. They had bigger plans, maybe a resort or housing development, and needed water rights. My grandfather's farm controlled nearly a mile of river frontage. Not interested, I said firmly. Now, unless you got official business, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave my property. Mac's friendly facade vanished. You're making a mistake, Miller. I've been patient because you're a veteran and all. People around here respect that. Even me. Appreciate the sentiment, I said dryly. He stepped closer, just beyond arm's reach. Last chance. I'm offering 30% above what this dump is worth. Cash. You can start fresh somewhere else. This dump is my home, I told him. It's not for sale. Not to you. Not to anyone. Max sighed dramatically. I tried being nice. He nodded to his men, who moved forward. Things get dangerous out here in the country. Isolation can be risky. Fires happen. Equipment fails. Sometimes people get hurt with no one around to help. The threat was clear. Inside the house, I heard low growling. Rex and Shadow, sensing the tension, eager to defend. I'm not isolated, I said calmly. And I'm not afraid of you. Mac laughed. You should be. 5 of us, 1 of you. Bad odds, soldier boy. I allowed myself a small smile. I've faced worse. We'll see. Mac turned to leave, then paused. 1 week, Miller. Think about my offer. After that, I can't guarantee your safety or the safety of your property. They climbed back into their trucks. As headlights swept across the porch, I caught a flash of metal from the passenger window of the last vehicle. A gun. Once they disappeared down the driveway, I went inside and called Sally. They came. I told her when she answered. Oh God, she whispered. What are you going to do? I looked at Rex and Shadow, now calm but vigilant, their eyes reflecting trust and readiness. These dogs had faced bombs and bullets with me. They'd tracked enemy combatants through mountains and deserts. Next to them, Mac Donovan was just another bully. I'm going to do what I was trained to do, I said quietly. Protect what matters. What I didn't tell Sally was that tomorrow, I planned to bring the fight to them. Mac thought he had me cornered, but he'd forgotten something important about veterans like me. We don't wait for the ambush. We set the terms of engagement. The first light of dawn hadn't even broken when I loaded Rex and Shadow into my truck. They sensed something was different today. Their bodies were tense, eyes alert, watching my every move for commands. These weren't just pets excited for a car ride. They were soldiers preparing for a mission. We're just gathering information, I told them, more to remind myself than anything. After my visitors yesterday, I knew I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. Main Street was empty as I drove through town, most shops still dark. Only Rosie's Café showed signs of life, lights glowing warm against the blue-gray morning. I parked across the street, in the shadow of the old hardware store. Stay, I commanded the dogs, cracking the windows just enough for fresh air. Then I settled in to watch. At exactly 6:30 a.m., a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up outside the cafe. Mac Donovan stepped out, alone this time. He straightened his expensive jacket and went inside. 15 minutes later, another car arrived. The sheriff. My jaw tightened as I watched him enter the cafe, glancing nervously over his shoulder first. Looks like Sally was right about the sheriff, I muttered. Rex whined softly from the back seat, picking up on my tension. I slid lower in my seat as more vehicles arrived over the next hour. A sleek sedan with a suit-wearing man clutching a briefcase. A truck with county government markings. By 8 a.m., 6 men had joined what was clearly a private meeting at Rosie's, which should have been busy with breakfast customers, but remained suspiciously empty. My phone buzzed. A text from Sally. They booked the whole place. Told me to take the morning off, but I'm watching from the back. Be careful. I texted back. Any idea what they're discussing? 3 dots appeared, then overheard something about water rights and zoning changes. Big money involved. That confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't just about my land. Mac was orchestrating something much bigger, and he'd pulled in local officials to help. I started the truck and drove slowly past the cafe. Through the windows, I could see them gathered around pushed-together tables, papers spread out. The man in the suit was pointing at what looked like a map. Time for phase 2, I told Rex and Shadow as we headed out of town. They sat up straighter, as if understanding. 20 minutes later, I parked on a back road near the edge of Mac's property. According to county records I'd checked online, he'd purchased this 500-acre former dairy farm just 6 months ago. Rumors said he'd paid cash. I grabbed my binoculars from under the seat. You two ready for a walk? Rex and Shadow leaped out when I opened the door, but stayed right beside me, disciplined and quiet. I attached their special tactical leashes, matte black, no reflective strips, to catch the light. Forward, I whispered, and we moved into the woods that border Mac's land. We stayed in the tree line, moving silently as we'd done on countless patrols overseas. The dogs were in their element, alert but controlled. When I stopped, they stopped. When I crouched, they lowered their bodies too. After 20 minutes, we reached a ridge overlooking Mac's property. What I saw made my blood run cold. This wasn't a farm anymore. Heavy equipment sat parked in neat rows, bulldozers, backhoes, cement mixers. A temporary office had been set up in trailers near the old farmhouse. Men in hard hats moved purposefully across the property. I raised my binoculars, focusing on a large sign partially covered with tarp. I could make out only part of the text. Future home of River Bend Resort and Casino. A casino, I whispered. Now it all made sense. The aggressive land purchases. The bought officials. The need for my property's river access. State laws prohibited casinos on most land, but there was a loophole for developments with significant water features. Mac needed my river frontage to qualify. Movement caught my eye. A group of men emerged from the main trailer, Mac among them. He was showing something on a tablet to 2 men in expensive suits I hadn't seen before. I adjusted my binoculars for a closer look. Suddenly Rex and Shadow tensed beside me, their bodies going rigid. Low growls rumbled in their throats. What is it, boys? I whispered. The answer came a moment later when a twig snapped behind us. Don't move, said a rough voice. Hands where I can see them. I slowly raised my hands, turning my head just enough to see Vince standing 10 feet away, shotgun leveled at my back. Pete stood beside him with a pistol. Look what we found, Pete, Vince sneered. A spy. My mind raced through options. Rex and Shadow could take these 2 down in seconds. We trained for exactly this scenario. But that would cross a line I wasn't ready to cross yet. Just taking a walk on public land, I said calmly. With military dogs and binoculars. Pete laughed. Sure you were. Vince gestured with his shotgun. Boss will want to talk to you. Move. I gave Rex and Shadow a subtle hand signal to stay calm. They obeyed, but I could feel their muscles trembling with restraint. The dogs stay with me, I said firmly. Fine, Vince shrugged. They can watch what happens to people who stick their noses where they don't belong. As they marched me down the hill toward the construction site, I caught sight of Mac watching our approach, a cruel smile spreading across his face. I'd come seeking information, but instead walked straight into a trap. And the worst part was, I'd brought Rex and Shadow into danger with me. But as Mac's men pushed me forward, I remembered something my commander once told me. sometimes you have to spring the trap to defeat the enemy. And these men had no idea what my dogs and I were capable of when truly cornered. Well, Max said, arms crossed as Vince and Pete marched me into the construction trailer. The hero farmer thinks he's a spy now. The trailer was set up as a makeshift office. Folding tables covered with blueprints and documents. A large map of the county pinned to one wall with properties highlighted in different colors. My farm was circled in red. Rex and Shadow stood perfectly still on either side of me, eyes forward, giving no indication of their training or capabilities. To anyone who didn't know better, they looked like ordinary dogs. But I could feel their energy, coiled and ready. Just out for a morning walk, I said, keeping my voice casual. Beautiful view from up there. Cut the crap, Max snapped. You were spying on us. I shrugged. Public land. Free country. Mac nodded to his men, who stepped back outside, leaving just the three of us in the trailer. Through the window, I could see them standing guard at the door. Let me show you something, Miller. Mac turned to the county map. See all this green? That's what I already own. The blue is what's under contract. And the red, he tapped my property, is the last piece I need. For your casino, I said. His eyebrows rose slightly. You've done your homework. Wasn't hard to figure out. Mac walked to a mini fridge, pulled out 2 water bottles, and tossed one to me. I caught it, but didn't open it. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, he said, unscrewing his bottle. Military intelligence. Just a grunt with good eyes, I replied. He chuckled. Well, your eyes have seen too much now. So let's talk business. My offer just doubled. Twice what your grandfather's dump is worth. Still not interested. Mac's friendly facade cracked slightly. Don't be stupid. This is happening with or without you. The zoning board votes next week. The county commissioners are on board. The water rights will be redirected. Sounds illegal, I observed. Sounds like progress, he countered. This will bring jobs, tourism, tax revenue. The whole county wins. Except the farmers you forced out, I said. And the people who want to keep living in a quiet community instead of a tourist trap. Max slammed his water bottle down, his patience clearly thinning. I'm trying to be reasonable here. You're one man standing in the way of a $100 million development. Do you really think that ends well for you? At the sharp tone, Rex and Shadow shifted almost imperceptibly. Only I noticed their subtle change in stance. Weight forward, muscles tensing. They were reading the threat in Mac's voice, preparing to protect me. Seems like you've got it all figured out, I said, keeping my tone even to settle the dogs. So why do you need my land so badly? There's plenty of river access on other properties you bought. Mac hesitated just long enough to confirm my suspicion. He was hiding something. Your section has the deepest water, he finally said. We need it for the marina. But his eyes flicked toward the map again, to a specific spot on my property. I followed his gaze, noting it was far from the river. What's really on my land that you want, Mac? I pressed. He smiled tightly. You think you're so clever. Fine, let's take a ride. I'll show you exactly why I need your worthless farm. Outside, Mac instructed Pete to drive us in the black SUV. Vince followed in a separate truck. The dogs stay here, Mac ordered. Then I stay too, I said firmly. We locked eyes for a long moment before he relented with a curse. Fine, but if they make one wrong move. They won't, I assured him, giving Rex and Shadow a hand signal to follow calmly. The SUV bounced along dirt roads until we reached the border between Mac's property and mine. He ordered Pete to stop, then turned to me. Get out. Leave the dogs in the car. This time, I knew I had to comply. I gave Rex and Shadow the command to stay, promising them with my eyes I'd be back. Mac led me to a spot where a small stream cut through both our properties. It looked ordinary, just flowing water, rocks, and mud. See that? He pointed to where the water bubbled up from underground on my side of the property line. A spring, I said, still not understanding. Not just any spring. He knelt, scooping up some of the water in his hand. This is mineral water, the same kind they bottle and sell for $5 a pop in fancy stores. We had it tested. It's perfect, pure, naturally filtered, full of the right minerals. Suddenly it clicked. You're not just building a casino. You're building a spa resort with exclusive bottled water. Mac nodded, looking almost impressed. The casino is just phase one. The real money is in wellness tourism. Rich people paying thousands a week to soak in baths filled with this water, drink it, have it piped directly to their luxury suites. And the source of this miracle water is on my land, I concluded. Now you get it. Max stood, brushing dirt from his expensive pants. So name your price. Everyone has one. I looked at the spring, understanding now why my grandfather had always insisted our well water was the best in the county. All these years, we've been sitting on liquid gold without knowing it. It's still not for sale, I said firmly. Mac's face hardened. Wrong answer. He gestured toward Pete, who reached into his jacket. I tensed, preparing for a weapon, but instead Pete pulled out a small glass vial. Mac took it and held it up. Know what this is? He asked. When I didn't answer, he continued. Industrial waste. Chemicals. One drop in your precious spring, and it's contaminated for generations. Worthless. My hands curled into fists. You're threatening to poison my land? I'm explaining reality, Mac replied coldly. By this time tomorrow, either you've agreed to sell, or something tragic happens to your water supply. Maybe a midnight spill. Maybe a leaking barrel that shows up on your property. Who knows how it got there? Certainly nothing that could be traced back to me. A cold fury rose inside me, different from the hot anger of combat. This man was threatening not just my home, but the land itself. Water that fed wildlife, trees, crops. Generations of careful stewardship wiped out by one act of greed. Back at the SUV, I could see Rex and Shadow watching intently through the windows. They'd picked up on the tension, on the threat. One whistle from me, and they'd be out of that vehicle in seconds. But not yet. This wasn't the time or place. You've made your point, I said carefully. I need to think about it. Smart man. Mac nodded, pocketing the vial. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, nature takes a very unnatural turn on your property. The drive back to the construction site was silent. When we arrived, Mac opened the door for me with mock courtesy. Remember, noon tomorrow. Call this number when you're ready to be reasonable. He handed me a business card. I whistled softly for Rex and Shadow, who leaped from the SUV and flanked me instantly. One more thing, Mac called as I turned to leave. Those dogs of yours. Military trained, right? I'm guessing they can do some real damage. I said nothing, just waited. Keep them locked up if you know what's good for them, he warned. Be ashamed if the sheriff got reports of dangerous animals and had to put them down. The threat against my dogs was his biggest mistake. I could handle threats against me. I could even handle threats against my land, painful as they were. But Rex and Shadow, they'd saved my life, kept me sane when the nightmares came. They were family. As I walked away, my mind was already shifting from defense to offense. Mac thought he had all the power, all the connections. But he'd forgotten something critical about combat veterans. We don't just know how to fight. We know how to win against impossible odds. And we never, ever leave our brothers behind. Come on, boys, I said quietly to Rex and Shadow as we hiked back to where I'd hidden my truck. We've got work to do. Behind us, Mac watched our departure, confident in his victory. He had no idea that by threatening my dogs, he just guaranteed his defeat. Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight. That's why I drove straight to Rosie's Cafe after leaving Mac's construction site, parking my truck right out front where everyone could see it. Rex and Shadow followed me inside, their nails clicking on the worn linoleum floor. The lunch crowd fell silent as we entered. News travels fast in small towns, and everyone knew about my run-in with Mac by now. They watched with curious, worried eyes as I settled at the counter. Sally hurried over, concern written across her face. Jake, I heard Mac's men caught you snooping around his property. Are you okay? I'm fine, I assured her, loud enough for everyone to hear. Just came in for some lunch. The other customers returned to their meals, but I could feel them stealing glances, listening in. Perfect. Let them think I was licking my wounds after being threatened. Let the story spread that Jake Miller was scared and defeated. Let Mac think he'd won. Coffee? Sally asked, already pouring a cup. And whatever's hot for lunch, I replied. The dogs need water too, please. As Sally put water bowls down for Rex and Shadow, I leaned in closer. Need your help, I whispered, privately, She nodded almost imperceptibly, then moved away to help other customers. 20 minutes later, as the lunch rush wound down, she motioned me toward the back hallway near the restrooms. "What's going on?" she asked once we were alone. "Whole town's talking about how Mac's men marched you off his property at gunpoint." "That part's true enough," I admitted. "But there's more. Mac threatened to contaminate the spring on my property if I don't sell by noon tomorrow." Sally's hand flew to her mouth. "He can't do that." "He can and he will," I said grimly. "Unless I stop him." "How?" "The sheriff won't help. He's in Mac's pocket." "Not going to the sheriff," I replied, going over his head. "But I need evidence." I explained my plan. It was risky, maybe even crazy, but it was our only shot. "I need to know who else Mac's threatening," I told her. "Anyone who's sold land to him recently. I need to know if they saw or heard anything that could help us." Sally thought for a moment. "The Wilsons sold 6 months ago, moved to Florida. But the Johnsons just sold last month, and they're still in town. Their barn fire. Everyone knew it was an accident." "Perfect," I nodded. "Can you arrange a meeting?" "Tonight?" "I'll try," she promised. "But Jake." She glanced toward Rex and Shadow, who waited patiently by the hallway entrance. "Be careful. Mac's dangerous." "So am I," I said quietly. "He just doesn't know it yet." Back at my farm, I walked the property line, checking for signs of intruders. Rex and Shadow ranged ahead, their keen senses alert for anything unusual. The spring Mac had shown me bubbled peacefully, unaware of the threat hanging over it. My grandfather had loved this land, had worked it every day until his heart gave out right there in the North Field. He'd left it to me knowing I'd treat it with the same respect he had. "Not gonna let you down, Grandpa," I murmured, kneeling to touch the clear, cool water. When my phone rang, I answered immediately. "It's Sally." The Johnsons agreed to meet. 8 o'clock at their place. "I'll be there." The Johnson farm was smaller than mine, tucked away down a winding side road. The scorched remnants of their barn stood like a black skeleton against the evening sky. Carl Johnson, a weathered man in his 60s, met me at the door with suspicious eyes. "Come in," he said curtly, eyeing Rex and Shadow with unease. "They'll stay on the porch," I assured him, commanding the dogs to sit. They obeyed instantly, taking up guard positions. Inside, Carl's wife Martha served coffee while their adult son, Kevin, watched me warily from across the kitchen table. "Sally says you're having trouble with Mac Donovan," Carl finally said. "Same as you did," I replied. "I'm not selling, and he's making threats." Martha's hands trembled slightly as she set down her coffee cup. "We tried not to sell," she said softly. "But after the fire, tell me what happened," I urged. Kevin leaned forward. "Dad refused Mac's first offer, said the land had been in our family for generations. 2 days later, our barn burns down in the middle of the night, with all our equipment inside. Insurance wouldn't cover it," Carl added bitterly. "Said it was arson, but couldn't prove who did it. We couldn't afford to replace everything. Then Mac showed up the next day," Martha continued, all sympathy and concern. "Offered to buy the farm again, at half his original offer. Said it was all he could do given the unfortunate decrease in property value." My jaw tightened. "Did you see who started the fire?" The family exchanged glances. "I did," Kevin admitted. "I was up late, couldn't sleep. Saw headlights coming up our drive around 2 a.m. Thought it was just teenagers looking for a place to park. But then I saw 2 men get out. They went straight to the barn. Could you identify them?" I asked. Kevin nodded slowly. "One was Vince, Mac's right-hand man. Never seen the other guy before." "Did you tell the sheriff?" Carl snorted. "Sheriff Dawson? He barely even investigated. Said there wasn't enough evidence." I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. "Would you be willing to tell your story again? On record this time?" They hesitated. "Mac threatened to poison my spring if I don't sell," I explained. "We need to stop him before he destroys more lives and land. But I can't do it alone." Kevin looked at his parents, then back at me. "What exactly are you planning?" "Something that might get us all in trouble," I admitted. But I faced worse odds. For the next hour, we talked strategy. By the time I left, the Johnsons had not only agreed to help, they had offered to reach out to other farmers who'd been forced to sell. Back in my truck, Rex and Shadow sensed my renewed determination. No longer were we just defending my farm. We were fighting for the whole community. As I drove home through the darkness, I spotted headlights in my rearview mirror. A vehicle had turned onto the road behind me, keeping its distance, but definitely following. "Looks like we've got company, boys," I murmured to the dogs. Instead of turning toward my farm, I took a different route, winding through back roads I knew well. The headlights remained behind me, sometimes falling back, but never disappearing. Finally, I pulled over in a secluded spot and killed my lights. Rex and Shadow went on alert as the following vehicle slowly approached, then stopped about 50 yards back. "Stay," I commanded the dogs, then stepped out of my truck. "Whoever you are," I called into the darkness, "might as well come out and talk face to face." The other vehicle's door opened. A figure emerged, hands raised to show they weren't armed. As they stepped into the moonlight, I recognized the county assessor, Alan Parker, one of the men I'd seen meeting with Mac at Rosie's Café that morning. "Mr. Miller," he called nervously, "I need to talk to you. Privately." "About what?" I asked, maintaining my distance. Parker glanced around anxiously. "About what Mac Donovan is really planning, and why you need to be extremely careful." "I'm listening." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "It's not just a casino and spa. There's something else in that water of yours. Something worth millions." Before he could explain further, headlights appeared on the road behind us. Parker's face went white with fear. "They followed me," he gasped. "You need to run. Now." As the vehicle bore down on us, I made a split-second decision. "Get my truck," I yelled to Parker. He sprinted toward me as I whistled for Rex and Shadow to make room. The approaching vehicle accelerated, and I caught a glimpse of Vince behind the wheel, his face twisted with rage. I gunned the engine just as Parker leaped in my passenger seat. Tires squealed as we fishtailed onto the road, Vince's truck close behind. "What's my water?" I demanded as we sped through the night. The dogs braced in the back seat. Parker clutched the dashboard as I took a sharp turn. "Lithium," he gasped. "Highest concentration in the state. Maybe the country. Worth a fortune in the battery market." The puzzle pieces fell into place. This wasn't about a casino or spa. Those were just covers for a massive mining operation. And Mac needed my land because the main deposit was directly beneath my spring. In the rearview mirror, Vince's truck was gaining. I knew these roads better than anyone, but his vehicle was faster, newer. I couldn't outrun him forever. As we approached a narrow bridge, I made a decision. "Hold on," I warned Parker. Then I swerved hard, crashing through a wooden fence and down a steep embankment toward the creek below. Water sprayed around us as my truck splashed into the shallow creek. The impact knocked the wind from my lungs, but years of military training kept my hands steady on the wheel. Behind us, Vince's headlights swept the embankment as he skidded to a stop, unable to follow our off-road escape. "Are you crazy?" Parker gasped, white-knuckled and shaking. "Probably," I agreed, carefully navigating the creek bed. Rex and Shadow had maintained perfect composure in the back, trained to stay calm under pressure. "But they can't follow us through here, and this leads right back to my property." Parker looked back nervously. "They'll be waiting for us on the road." "Not going back to the road," I said, guiding the truck deeper into the water. "There's an old logging trail that runs along this creek straight to my back 40. Nobody uses it anymore except me." 10 minutes of slow, careful driving brought us to my land. I killed the headlights and navigated by moonlight until we reached my barn. Once inside, I shut the big doors and only then turned on a small work light. Parker slumped in his seat, the adrenaline crash hitting him hard. "I shouldn't have come to you," he muttered. "If Mac finds out." "Why did you?" I asked, letting Rex and Shadow out of the truck. They shook off, then immediately began patrolling the barn perimeter, still on duty. Parker ran a trembling hand through his thinning hair. "Because what he's doing is wrong. I'm the county assessor. I'm supposed to work for the people, not help some outsiders steal their land. Yet you were at his meeting this morning," I pointed out. He looked ashamed. He paid me to undervalue the properties he wanted. Said it was just business. Parker pulled out a flash drive from his pocket. "But then I saw these plans. The environmental impact reports they're hiding. The chemicals they'll use to extract the lithium will poison the groundwater for miles. I took the flash drive, turning it over in my hand. Why now? Why come clean? My grandkids swim in that river every summer, he said simply. Some lines you just can't cross. I studied him for a moment, then nodded. This wasn't just evidence. It was ammunition. You need to hide, I told him. Mac's men will be looking for you. And me. Where? Parker asked, panic edging back into his voice. I pulled out my phone and called Sally. She answered on the first ring. Jake, what's happening? Need another favor, I said. Got someone who needs a safe place to stay. Someone with evidence against Mac. Sally didn't hesitate. My sister's place in the next county. No one would think to look there. Perfect. We'll be there in an hour. After hanging up, I grabbed my go bag from a storage locker, old habits from deployment that had finally found use. Inside were emergency supplies, cash, and my grandfather's old service pistol, legally owned and registered. You're really prepared, Parker observed. Military training, I explained, loading the bag into the truck. Planned for every contingency. We took back roads to Sally's sister's house, watching for followers. The modest farmhouse was dark except for a single porch light. Sally met us at the door, ushering Parker inside. My sister's away visiting her daughter, she explained. He'll be safe here. I handed her the flash drive. This needs to get to the State Environmental Protection Agency and the FBI. Can you make it happen? She tucked it into her pocket. My cousin works for the state EPA office in the Capitol. I'll drive there myself tomorrow. What about you? Parker asked me. They'll be coming for you too. Let them come, I said quietly. Then, seeing Sally's alarmed expression, I added, don't worry. I won't be alone. Back at my farm, I found everything quiet. Too quiet. They were watching, waiting. I could feel it. Inside the house, I checked my security cameras. Nothing yet. But they'd come. Probably tonight. Rex and Shadow followed me room to room as I prepared. During our training overseas, we'd secured buildings, cleared rooms, protected perimeters. Now we'd use those same skills to defend our home. I placed my grandfather's shotgun near the front door, loaded but safety on, just in case. Not that I planned to use it. Despite what Mac might think, I wasn't looking to hurt anyone. But sometimes the mere presence of a weapon can prevent violence. As midnight approached, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Deal still stands until noon. Last chance. I didn't reply. Instead, I settled into my grandfather's old rocking chair by the front window, dogs at my feet, and waited. The attack came at 2:17 a.m. My motion sensors pinged as 3 vehicles approached down my long driveway. Lights off. On the security camera feed, I watched dark figures spread out across my property. Rex and Shadow stood alert, sensing my tension, waiting for commands. I scratched behind Rex's ears. Remember our training, boys. Non-lethal takedowns only. The first window shattered in my kitchen, a diversion. The real entry team would be coming through the back door. Classic tactics, but amateur execution. Whoever these guys were, they weren't professionals. I moved silently to my position near the stairs, where I could observe both the front and back entrances. The security system I'd installed years ago, paranoia that finally proved useful, gave me eyes everywhere. The back door crashed open. 3 men entered, faces covered by ski masks, carrying baseball bats and what looked like hunting rifles. Not Mac's usual goons. These were local muscle, hired for the night. Find Miller, one hissed. Mac wants him scared, not dead. I smiled grimly in the darkness. They still didn't understand who they were dealing with. I waited until all 3 were fully inside, then whistled, a specific pattern Rex and Shadow had been trained to recognize. In an instant, the dogs were in motion, silent blurs of disciplined fury. Shadow took down the first man with a leap that sent him crashing face first into my kitchen table. Rex went low, clamping onto another man's calf with enough pressure to immobilize without maiming. The third intruder raised his rifle in panic, but before he could fire, I emerged from the shadows and disarmed him with a quick strike to the wrist, a move I'd learned in hand-to-hand combat training. The rifle clattered to the floor as the man stumbled back in shock. "What the hell?" he gasped, staring at my dogs, who now had his companions effectively pinned. "These ain't normal dogs." "No," I agreed calmly. "They're not. And I'm not a normal farmer." Outside, car doors slammed as the remaining intruders fled, leaving their friends behind. The whole encounter had taken less than 30 seconds. I flipped on the lights, revealing 3 terrified men. I recognized one, the bartender from the local dive bar. The others were strangers, probably brought in from neighboring towns. "Here's what happens next," I told them, my voice steady as I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the state police, not our local sheriff. You're going to tell them exactly who sent you and why. In return, I won't press charges for breaking and entering." "Mac will kill us," the bartender whimpered. "Mac won't be able to hurt anyone after tonight, I promised. Now, who wants to talk first?" As I dialed the state police, headlights swept across my front windows. A black SUV had pulled up, and Mac himself stepped out, flanked by Vince and Pete. "Looks like the boss came to oversee the operation personally," I told my captive audience. Perfect timing. Rex and Shadow tensed, ready for new commands. But I held them steady with a small hand gesture. This confrontation needed to play out differently. I stepped onto my front porch, leaving the captured intruders inside. The morning air was cool, dawn still hours away. Max stood at the bottom of my porch steps, his face a mask of controlled rage. "I see you've met my dogs properly now," I called out. "They're very protective." Max sneered. "Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. Miller, by noon today, I'll own this place one way or another." "I know about the lithium, Mac," I said quietly. His expression flickered, surprise quickly masked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Your environmental assessor had a crisis of conscience," I continued. "Those files are already on their way to the state capitol. By noon, it won't be me you're worried about. It'll be a team of federal investigators." Then stepped forward, hand moving toward his jacket. "Boss, let me handle this." I wouldn't, I warned, just as Rex and Shadow appeared silently on either side of me, their attention fixed on the threat. "Unless you want to see what military K9s are really trained to do." The night fell silent as we faced off, Mac calculating his odds, me standing my ground. Behind me, I could hear sirens in the distance, growing louder. My heart pounded as bullets cracked past my head. I sprinted across the moonlit yard, diving behind an old oak tree as another shot splintered bark inches from my face. Back at the house, I could hear shouts of pain and surprise as Rex and Shadow did what they were trained for. Their growls mixed with human yells told me they were buying me precious time. "Get those dogs!" Max screamed from somewhere in the darkness. "And find him." I had to reach the barn. Inside was my only chance to turn this around. The night air felt electric as I zigzagged between shadows, staying low like I'd been taught in combat training. Another bullet kicked up dirt at my feet. These weren't warning shots anymore. Mac had come to finish this. I reached the barn door, fumbling with the padlock with sweaty hands. A truck engine roared to life behind me. They were trying to use headlights to spot me. I finally got the lock open and slipped inside the dark barn, the familiar smell of hay and old wood greeting me. My fingers found the hidden switch on the workbench. With one click, my farm transformed. Floodlights blazed to life, illuminating every corner of my property like daylight. The men attacking my home froze in the sudden brightness, momentarily blinded and exposed. I could see 5 of them now, more than I'd expected. Mac had brought serious backup. "This is private property. Law enforcement has been notified." My pre-recorded voice boomed from speakers mounted on the house and barn. The security system I'd installed, thanks to my tech buddy from my old unit, was designed to make attackers think twice. Through the barn window, I spotted Rex and Shadow. They had 2 men pinned to the ground, their training perfect as always. The men weren't seriously hurt, just terrified and unable to move without risking a bite. But Mac wasn't so easily scared. I watched him recover quickly, shouting orders to the others as he pointed toward the barn. He'd figured out where I was. I moved deeper into the barn, past stacked hay bales to the back corner where my real contingency plan waited. I pulled away a tarp, revealing the small ham radio set. Cell signals might be jammed, but old-school radio waves could still get through. Scarecrow to home base, emergency protocol alpha, I said in the microphone, using the code Sally and I had established weeks ago. 5 hostiles, armed and dangerous. Static answered me for 3 long seconds before a voice crackled back. Home base to Scarecrow. Message received. Help is coming. Hold position. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. They were surrounding the barn. We know you're in there, soldier boy. Mac's voice called out. No dogs to save you now. I quickly checked my pockets for anything useful. Just a pocket knife and a small flashlight. Not much against shotguns and whatever else they brought. My own weapons were back in the house. A rookie mistake I wouldn't make again if I survived this night. The barn door creaked open. I ducked behind a tractor as a flashlight beam swept across the interior. Come out, come out. Wherever you are, sang one of Mac's men, his voice slurred with what smelled like whiskey courage. Boss wants to talk to you about property values. A cold laugh followed his words. I clutched the flashlight, considering my options. The radio message had gone through, but help would take time to arrive. I needed to stay alive until then. The man moved deeper into the barn, his heavy breathing giving away his position. I waited until he passed, then silently moved toward the door. If I could circle around outside, maybe I could reach Rex and Shadow. But as I reached the doorway, a shotgun barrel pressed against my back. Going somewhere, Mac asked, his voice like ice. I turned slowly, hands raised. Mac's face was a mess, deep scratches across one cheek where Shadow had clearly tagged him. Blood dripped onto his shirt collar. You should get that looked at, I said. Dog bites get infected easy. His face twisted with rage. Your mutts are being dealt with. And now it's your turn. He marched me out into the yard, shotgun jabbing between my shoulder blades. The 2 men my dogs had pinned were up now, looking battered and nervous. I couldn't see Rex or Shadow anywhere. My heart sank. Where are my dogs? I demanded. Mac shoved me forward. Shut up and walk. Your dogs ran off while my boys showed them what real teeth look like. I knew it was a lie. Rex and Shadow wouldn't run. They were trained better than that. Either they were hurt or they were circling, waiting for a command. I had to believe it was the latter. Mac pushed me toward my front porch, now littered with broken glass from my shot-out windows. You know what happens to people who don't learn their lesson? He growled. They don't get second chances. He raised the shotgun to my chest. This was it. Then in the distance I heard engines. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Mac heard it too. His eyes flickered with uncertainty for the first time. Headlights appeared on my long driveway, bouncing wildly as trucks sped toward us. Not police cruisers, farm trucks. Big ones. What the hell? One of Mac's men shouted. The first truck skidded to a stop in my yard, and the driver's door flew open. Old Mr. Jenkins stepped out, rifle in hand. Behind him, more trucks arrived, the Millers, the Cartwrights, the Johnsons. All farmers, all armed, all looking very, very angry. Evening, Mac, called Mr. Jenkins, his voice steady despite his 70 years. Heard there might be some trouble out at the old Miller place. Mac's face drained of color as more farmers emerged from their vehicles. I counted at least 15 of them now, forming a half circle around us. This isn't your fight, Mac called back, but his voice had lost its edge. Mr. Jenkins spat on the ground. When you come after one of ours, you come after all of us. That's when I spotted Sally climbing out of the last truck, a state police officer at her side. Not the local sheriff, state police. And behind them, Rex and Shadow trotted into view, alert but unharmed. Mac saw them too. The shotgun wavered in his hands. Seems like you picked the wrong town, I said quietly. The wrong cafe, the wrong veteran, and definitely the wrong community to mess with. The state police car's red and blue lights painted the pre-dawn sky as officers led Mac and his crew away in handcuffs. My farmhouse stood battered but still standing. Broken windows and bullet holes couldn't break its spirit. Kind of like me. You knew they'd come after you, Sally said, handing me a steaming mug of coffee as we watched from my porch steps. She made it in my kitchen while medics checked the superficial wounds Rex and Shadow had given Mac's men. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. Some battles find you whether you're looking for them or not. Rex pressed against my leg, his warm body a comfort I'd relied on through too many dark nights overseas. I scratched behind his ears, exactly where he liked it. Shadow patrolled the yard, still on alert even though the danger had passed. Old habits. The first rays of sunlight touched the fields beyond my property. Fields that would stay in the hands of the families who'd worked them for generations. How long have you been working with the state police? I asked Sally. She sipped her own coffee before answering. 6 months. After Mac burned down the Wilson place and scared them into selling. Everyone knew he did it, but nobody could prove it. Her eyes, tired but determined, met mine. Until you showed up and gave him something to react to. So how was bait? I couldn't help smiling. More like the catalyst we needed. I've been gathering evidence for months. Falsified deeds, threats, money trails. But we needed him to make a move obvious enough that even his friends in the sheriff's office couldn't ignore it. I looked around at the neighbors who had come to my aid. Old Mr. Jenkins was talking with the state police officer, pointing to the bullet holes in my walls. The Miller siblings, whose family had owned my place before me, were picking up broken glass from my yard. Young Tim Cartwright was patching my broken window with plywood. I've been in firefights in 3 countries, I said quietly, but I've never had anyone show up like this. Sally touched my arm gently. That's what community is. Something worth fighting for. A state police lieutenant approached us, notebook in hand. Her badge read Lieutenant Santos. Mr. Hayes, she said, we'll need your official statement. But I wanted you to know, we found quite the operation at Donovan's warehouse. Land deeds, forged documents, even plans for a development that would have pushed out every small farmer in the county. And replaced them with what? I asked. Resort homes. Golf courses. The whole county was about to be sold out from under you all. Mr. Jenkins joined us, leaning on his walking stick. His weathered face showed every year of his 70 summers working this land. My grandfather fought in World War I to come home to this land, he said. My father in World War II. My son gave his life in Afghanistan. His voice broke slightly. Would have been about your age now. I knew what it cost him to say those words. The weight of them settled on my shoulders like a familiar rucksack. We protect what matters, I told him, the words feeling right in my mouth. More neighbors gathered around us as the police finished their work. Mrs. Wilson, who'd lost her farm to Mac's threats, pressed a basket of homemade biscuits into my hands. For you and your brave dogs, she whispered. Sheriff Garner arrived last, looking uncomfortable as he surveyed the state police cars. I watched his face when he saw Mac in the back seat of one of them. Something like relief flashed across his features. He approached me slowly, hat in hand. Hayes, he said with a nod. Looks like I missed something big here. Looks like I agreed, not making it easy for him. There's been talk about Donovan for years, the sheriff continued, but without proof. He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. Anyway, I'm glad it's over. Town can heal now. Sally gave him a look that could have frozen water, only because someone was willing to stand up when no one else would. The sheriff had the grace to look ashamed as he walked away. By mid-morning, my house was full of people, neighbors bringing food, offering help with repairs, telling stories about how Mac had pressured them over the years. I'd never seen my kitchen so full of life. Even Rex and Shadow relaxed, accepting gentle pats from children who'd been taught how to approach working dogs. When most of the crowd had gone, Sally stayed behind to help clean up. We worked side by side, washing dishes in comfortable silence. What will you do now? She finally asked. Your peaceful retirement got pretty exciting. I looked out the window at my fields waiting to be planted, at the barn that needed a new coat of paint, at the community that had shown up when it mattered most. I'm staying, I said simply. This is home now, even with all the excitement. There was something hopeful in her voice, maybe because of it. I handed her a dried plate. First time since I left the service that I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. She smiled, and I noticed how it reached her eyes. Town council meets Thursdays. We could use someone who knows how to plan a defense. That made me laugh, a real laugh that felt good rumbling up from my chest. Are you recruiting me, Sally? Maybe. She put down her towel and faced me. Or maybe I'm just glad you're staying. Outside, Rex and Shadow napped in the sunshine on my porch. The bullet holes in my walls would need patching. My windows would need replacing. But for the first time in years, I felt something that had been missing since my last tour ended. Purpose. I come looking for a quiet place to heal old wounds. Instead, I found a community worth fighting for and maybe, just maybe, a future worth building. Thursday works for me, I told Sally. But first, I've got a farm to fix. As if understanding my words, Rex lifted his head and gave a soft woof of agreement. Shadow's tail thumped against the porch boards. The war was finally over, and this time I had truly found my way home.